You know the place that you used to play football at, LaVar? DC, the Washington Commandos.
Yeah.
You know, they got this problem.
What is
Apparently nobody wants their head coaching gig.
Well, Eric Benemy wants it.
I don't know. I mean, Ben Johnson, that felt like that was going to be the landing spot for him that everybody was anticipating. And Ben Johnson, the OC for the Detroit Lions, decided yesterday, nah, I don't want to go. I'm going to stay put in Detroit for at least another year. And so he returns back to the Detroit Lions, one game away from the Super Bowl. Maybe they feel like he's a lot closer to accomplishing that goal. That's why he's returning. But there was this speculation.
What was it?
This report out from Adam Schefter that, some of the salary demands were a little bit too much for some of these teams that were interested in Ben Johnson. Like, I don't know, maybe he got a little bit greedy. So, Brady, your guy Schefter is in all the way on some of the details of these coaching searches. And now that we know happened, according to Schefter, why Ben Johnson's not in Washington as the head coach of the Commandos.
Yes, according to Schefter.
Yeah.
Yes.
Shefty.
Old Shefty.
Oh, Shefty.
Like he was helping out old Rich McKay with the whole Atlanta situation. Let me ask you this: Do you feel like if Bill Belichick asked for $20 million plus a year, is that asking for too much?
No,
Okay,
but it could be.
What do you say? But could
But
be.
could be. No,
Why's that?
in theory, but because if you're going to pay for what you get for it, that's the old adage, right? That's the saying.
Yeah.
You pay for what you get.
So the reason why I asked the question is, what happens if he was making that in New England? Like, wouldn't you think if you're Bill Belichick's point, his success, given all the different things he's probably going to do within the organization, wouldn't you say, like, yeah, this is what I was being paid. This is what I'm asking if I'm going to come to Washington, right? I would think most people would be like, yeah, it makes sense. I don't have any problem with it.
I think I would sit there as the person who's going to pay you and say they got rid of you. So the value you had yesterday, as much as it can change for the higher up, it could go down as well.
It's cold.
You're looking for a gig.
I don't know about that. Because here's one of the reasons why it's easier for coordinators to stay. Because coordinators are getting paid boatloads of money. There's some top coordinators who get paid like $4 million, $4.5 million.
And I'd be
You know that?
happy right there.
Did you know that?
And
I'm going to call these plays.
Like, think about this. We're talking
Did you
about
know
10 years ago. There used to be head coaches that'd be making that as a salary. Now we're talking about coordinators who are making that as a salary.
Head coaches make less than that a few years ago. Well, in college. Yeah, but
so my point is this: is if you are Ben Johnson and you hear, like, because we talk about this all the time when like a quarterback comes up to have their contract, extended. Like, well, what should he make? Well, he's not Patrick Mahomes, right? No one's Patrick Mahomes in the NFL. But we see guys who outpace him with their contract, do we not? Who don't have the qualifications or haven't achieved as much as Patrick Mahomes has. Yet we don't say anything when those guys surpass Patrick Mahomes' contract, do we? So then why is it an issue if a guy like Ben Johnson, who, by the way, was interviewing last year for head coaching jobs, puts up a price tag that's, I don't know, along the same as Bill Belichick? Maybe he feels like he is the next Bill Belichick. So my whole thing is, if that's what you want to report and say, okay. Like, come on, dude. Like, it's like we're going to say, oh, some people were surprised. Well, what do you ask for? $50 million? $40 million? What was the number? Because the reality is, too, as a head coach, whatever they get paid, it doesn't count against the cap. It's not hamstringing the organization. Like, you're the Washington Commandos. You've got this new ownership group that's supposedly got such deep pockets. You can't afford to pay for maybe the youngest, brightest mind in the game right now? A guy who did come from the Shanahan tree, kind of has like paved his own path in a way. So I'm just saying, if that's the report, it's kind of just contradicting, because we seem to not ever have an issue with this when Dak Prescott signs the best deal for a quarterback, right, in the NFL. Yet if a coordinator then wants to have one of the best contracts as a head coach, that all of a sudden becomes an issue? I don't know. Doesn't really make as much sense to me.
I know when I was coming out in the draft, I told the Cleveland Browns they had to pay me like a quarterback for me to do the deal pre-draft. And they were like, well, that's kind of ambitious. Why do you feel that way? I said, well, you're negotiating with me and you want me to come play for your team, correct? They're like, yeah. I was like, well, if I'm going to go number one to Cleveland, where respectfully, I don't know that what type of career I'll have there and what will happen next, I need to be paid like a quarterback because you're drafting me with your first overall pick. And so I understand the idea of trying to go out and get value for what it is that you bring to the table. I didn't think that I would ever get paid again if I went to Cleveland. And so when you look at it as a head coach, this is a volatile, turbulent job still. Even with the new ownership group, it's still violent and turbulent waters that you have to navigate in Washington, D.C. And I think we're seeing how it's not a given that you're going to receive an opportunity to be a head coach. It's such a scarce position to have.
Ooh, so you don't think you think he'll be a one and done, or I guess two and done?
No, I'm not saying he'd be a one and done. I'm saying if you're in a good situation where you can continue to take your value up and justify it, why take a chance? Because you get 1.5 to 2 chances at being a head coach.
Yeah.
So if you're going to take a job, is what I'm saying, and that's why I use my drafts, my draft story as an example. If you're going to choose to go take this job on, the chances right now, the odds are against you, not in favor of you to have success in Washington. We've not seen any coach, not one, Joe Gibbs, but real success, you've not really seen one coach throughout an entire 20 years have real success, sustained success in Washington. So you got to pay. You got to pay. If you're going to bring in a bright young man, a bright young mind to coach your team, chances are you're going to have to pay, because it could be a career killer for you as a head coach.
Yeah, if it flames out in a year or two, which we've
Just
seen
reality.
happen all the time. I mean, look, Frank Reich didn't even they were still paying a guy, and Frank Reich, who has had a ton of success in the NFL before, ended up not even lasting the entire season in Carolina and was ousted. And it's like, that's why he said it.
You see this going around. If you see that that's what's taking place, how quickly a coach can lose his job, then why wouldn't you try to set yourself up financially? If you're going to disrupt the success that you're having that's led to you having the opportunity to get a head coaching job, why would you not want to go after the best type of compensation that you have, knowing that I can just fall back into what position I have right now currently and continue on the trajectory that I'm on? Why do it? The Washington Commanders don't have the leverage to tell you that you're not worth that. Like, you're not a good franchise right now. Maybe you're turning the culture around. Maybe you're changing things and making it better for the better, but that hasn't shown. That's not on the market. The market doesn't read that on the market analysis of what your business is. Business is that I'm taking over a crappy business and you want me to make it a winner, but yet you don't want to pay me to make it a winner. That's how I would look at it.
It also helps if you pay someone a lot. It's be hard to move on from them right away.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like Ben Johnson didn't have conversations with Carolina or some of these other teams. He has interviewed previously with different owners. And so part of it may be like, if you truly want to invest into me as a head coach, you need to pay me or compensate me to a point where if you have to move on from me before I feel like I've been given a fair shot, it's going to be painful. And that's a strategy that I think makes sense from the standpoint that with some of these organizations, to your point, LaVar, that haven't had success, you almost have to make it almost impossible for them to impact your first 3-4 years.
It's a suck tax, right? We suck, so we get taxed a little more on what we're giving out.
I mean,
suck tax is one way of putting it. Yeah. I don't know that's exactly how to describe it.
I wouldn't even say pause to that one either. I'd be all in on that.
You've used suck tax probably in different ways.
Right.
Jonas, so.
We'll get that up close and personal next week in Vegas.
Me and Coop got the suck tax. we got that suck tax. Me and Coop.
Damn.
Coop. Come on, man.
Yeah, you got to pay a little bit more if you're a bad team.
Pay the tax, Coop.
Do you think part of that was why David Tepper had to give Canales a 6-year? It's like, listen, I need some assurances that I'm not going to be ousted here.
Well, hold on. Did Rule have a 7-year deal?
Yes.
Yeah, I forget how long Frank Reich's was. Like, what does it matter how long is it Tepper?
But it is interesting that Belichick hasn't gotten a sniff from Washington. Like, they haven't interviewed him. They haven't had a conversation. Like, there's no...
I keep going back to Eric Bieniemy. Like, you can say Belichick, but Eric Bieniemy has been, like, the conversation surrounding him as a head coach was such at a high feverish pitch last offseason. Like, so much to the point or to the tune where he actually left. He left Kansas City to go coach somewhere else so that he could get whatever it is, the stigma of it's Andy Reid calling the offenses. Whatever it is you want to make it out to be. He is there. You brought him in as a major hire. Keep that in mind. You used Eric Bieniemy as a major hire in a market that would be very supportive of an Eric Bieniemy if y'all picking up what I'm putting down. I mean, the city is nicknamed Chocolate City. So you're in a scenario. You never knew that? DC?
Did not know that. DC is named what?
Nicknamed Chocolate City.
It's called Chocolate City?
Yeah.
Oh.
Damn.
I thought it was our nation's capital.
Well, that's what it is, but they call it Chocolate City. Look it up.
Don't they call Salt Lake White Chocolate City?
I would assume that they might call it that.
I don't know. I'm just trying to get to the bottom of this.
We're much like Jim Harbaugh, maybe you just tag Utah. I wouldn't disagree with you there.
Okay, we're just making sure.
All right, but I didn't make that name up. You look it up.
It's actually coming from a popular funk song. I had to say that very slowly.
Okay.
Yeah, that is a tough one.
Funk.
This early in the
after
morning.
the passage of the District of Columbia's Home Rule Act in 1973, that it was proudly embraced by Washingtonians.
It was embraced, and I embraced it. I still embrace it.
Yeah,
to this day. But to me, it's there has to be a considered indictment on Eric Bieniemy to be a head coach at this point. If he doesn't get it with the circumstances surrounding the Commanders, I mean, I would almost have to say it's a wrap on him getting a head coaching job. And then now you got to think about, okay, if it's not a young mind that it is a bright offensive mind that you're going for, does it turn into Vrabel? Does that become a name that becomes prominent in what you're thinking to do? You got to bring in the right personality.
I've heard what those numbers look like. I mean, it's out there what it costs to be a head coach in the NFL. These numbers are extremely high, and they're somewhat driven up, too, by the college football numbers. So tell me this much. Jim Harbaugh was being offered what by Michigan, the last that we reportedly heard?
12?
12 and a half.
That's
10 years, 12 and a half per year, in college.
Dang.
And that doesn't probably include incentives and all that, too. So that's in college at Michigan. So do you think he's going to go take the Chargers job for less? Do you think some of these guys who are looking at NFL head coaching positions aren't saying, well, Michigan's open. I could go there for that amount.
After winning a nice national title, by the way. So my price tag went up. It should have gone up. But
there's other guys who get paid in that ballpark. I mean, that already haven't won most recently, right? They just kind of re-up, and they have to for recruiting purposes, right? But as soon as your contract gets within 3 years, or less, every single school recruits against you that way. Well, his contract, he's only going to be there for another 2 years. Every coach will say that in recruiting against you. So there's mechanisms that typically kick in where these coaches get extended out another year, so that they can tell the recruiting class, like, oh, yeah, I'm under contract for the entirety of your class. That's how it works. And so if you're getting paid that at the college level, what do you think these NFL guys are getting paid? I heard one prominent candidate talking about how, yeah, if they're going to pay me $20 million to go there, I'll go coach there. I was like, dang, that's how much these guys are getting paid now. But that's the reality of it. So I would love to know if Schefter's going to report it. Put out the number then. Like, don't just say like, oh, they were spooked off. Put out the number, because there's a lot of guys out there who I've heard what their number is, and it's a high number. And so maybe that's why these organizations don't want to go with him. But here's the problem: is now Ben Johnson goes back to Detroit. He's got 2 years left on his deal. He could sign, a bigger extension. Bobby Slowick signs a new deal with the Houston Texans. You're going to lose these guys if you really, really want them. So maybe you're not getting the best of the best when you're hiring your head coach. Maybe you're just getting a guy that you feel like you can pay cheap and you can control. Whoever's in your front office, whoever's an owner. And if that's what it's about, then yeah, Washington's going to continue to be Washington. It's crazy to me, to Jonas's point, though, like, you don't talk to Belichick? Like, why not Vrabel? Is the price tag too high for you? Then you just come off as cheap.
Yeah, not a good look.
Well, that's one thing that Dan Snyder didn't come off as. That's for certain.
Yeah.
Well, in some cases.
Not a. Damn.
In some cases.
Damn.